planning on doing this right now, but I found myself in front of the computer and my hair looks decent, so okay. I have a few minutes, so I'm going for it. Chapter 22. Abraham tested. This is Genesis chapter 22. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham?" "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." Verse 3. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and saddled his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. Verse 4. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. It doesn't say how he knew what place. Remember, it just said, God said, "Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." And so then the next thing we know, Abraham looks up. It says here, on the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. So did God tell him inside in his mind, in his thoughts? Did he just know that that was the place? Verse 5, he said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Well, now, he knows he's supposed to sacrifice the boy. Could he have said to his servants, "Hey, I'm going to go sacrifice my son and then I'll come back to you"? It's possible. Who knows? I mean, maybe the servants would have let him do it. Maybe the servants would have fought to protect Isaac and killed or tied up Abraham or something to keep Abraham from doing this. So Abraham didn't let there be any distractions. It doesn't say in here that he told Sarah. And now keep in mind, he waited forever for this son. Isaac was born when he was, 100 years old? And now God is testing him and asking him to sacrifice this boy that he's waited so long for. And I'm sure it doesn't make any sense because he was told that all these nations would come from Isaac. So how can that happen? How can Isaac have descendants if he obeys God and now kills Isaac? But it doesn't sound like he had any doubt or anything. He must have figured that the Lord would raise Isaac back up from the dead or something, but he trusted God so much they just didn't question it, apparently. Not that we know of. And he didn't tell anybody from what we can tell either. We know that he either lied to his servants or he believed that Isaac would be raised from the dead and just come back. So he said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we will come back to you." So he didn't even want the servants nearby. So not only did he mislead them, but he didn't even want them close enough to know what was going on, apparently. Verse 6, Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" So we're not told what age Isaac is here. It starts off, chapter 22 starts off verse 1 saying sometime later. So it's almost like they're purposely not telling us because they are telling us, they're talking about the time frame, but they're not being specific as to the time frame. So for whatever reason, we're not told exactly how old. All right, so sometime later. We don't know the age of Isaac. But Isaac's smart enough. He's talking and he's smart enough to know that there should be some animal that needs to be sacrificed, and he's assuming a lamb here. So he says, "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Verse 8, Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. Okay, so when they reached the place God had told him about. So at some point, God did tell him about it. God said, I will tell you about it. And then we're told he saw the place. So God must have already told him about it. And then we're told here in verse 9, when they reached the place God had told him about. We don't know how God told him about it or at what point, but somewhere between the time when he looked up and saw it and the time when he was told that, I'll tell you when you get there, basically, he was told. My guess would be that he was told right at the point where maybe look up and right there, that's the mountain where I want you to do this. But that's just a guess. Okay, so when they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. So now Isaac has a good idea that he's the sacrifice. So he bound his son Isaac and lay him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Verse 11, but the angel of the Lord, now it says angel of the Lord, keep in mind, difference between when they say Lord and angel of the Lord. But the angel of the Lord, capital L-O-R-D, Yahweh, but the angel of Yahweh called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Okay, so verse 10 says, then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. So he didn't start to slay him yet, but he grabbed the knife. So Abraham was going to go through with this. Or at least it sure appeared as if he's going to go through with this. It doesn't talk about any hesitation whatsoever. So verse 11, but the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he replied. Do not lay a hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Wow. When we get to the New Testament, if you haven't already heard the wonderful news, God himself gives up his son, his only son, sacrifices him. That's what God's willing to do for us. And when we read this, we find out that Abraham was willing to do this for God. And I have to wonder if that didn't have to happen first. But I don't know. Did a man have to be willing to sacrifice his son for God in order for God to sacrifice his son for us? I don't know. But he did test Abraham, and that would have been quite a test. So verse 12, do not lay a hand on the boy, this angel of the Lord said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God. There's a verse later on in the Bible that says the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Okay? So it says here, do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Now, is Isaac his only son? No. Isaac's his second son. Ishmael is his first son. But he sent Ishmael away. So, you get the feeling that maybe he has not seen Ishmael since then. Maybe it was like a cut off from the family kind of thing at that point, so that now Isaac was his only son, as if Ishmael didn't exist any longer. I don't know. Verse 13, Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, "The Lord will provide." Okay, I'm sure it was probably one word, maybe two words, but in their language, their names meant something. And so whatever the word was or words were, it meant the Lord will provide. So because the Lord provided his own sacrifice, so that, I mean, he didn't have to put a ram there. He didn't have to let a ram get caught in there earlier in the thicket. So Abraham could have just taken his son and left. But Abraham in his heart probably now really wanted to give a sacrifice to the Lord because the Lord just spared his son. Okay, so now he probably really, really wanted to give an offering. And he had nothing to give him. And there he looks, and this ram is stuck in the thicket. It says here, Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." Wow. So they call that the mountain of the Lord. And the saying is, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." Now it says, "And to this day it is said." So whether or not it's said until now, I don't know. But up until this was written, it was said. That was the saying, the cliche, or whatever you want to call it. Verse 15, the angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me." Wow. Okay, so this was the angel of the Lord. The angel of Yahweh called to him again. Now the angel of Yahweh is saying what the Lord said. He is saying, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord." Okay, so he's like the messenger. "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore." He already made that promise before, but now he's saying, absolutely, no question about it. Now I absolutely am going to do this, even though he already made the covenant and already promised this and already absolutely agreed to this. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies. Haven't heard that one yet. Except we did hear that all that land would belong to them. Okay, maybe at that time that land was their enemies, but I don't think so because they were living there. So maybe he's talking about a future time. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies. And I mean, it has to be future time. Duh, I'm sorry. Because he says, your descendants. Okay, verse 18. And through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. Okay, well, are we talking about Jesus here? Like I said, because Abraham was willing to sacrifice his son, his only son, now Jesus is going to come from his line, and now everybody's going to be blessed because God is going to sacrifice his son, his one and only son. Is that the blessing? The Hebrew people, the Jewish people come from here, and we know that an awful lot of geniuses and inventions came from Jewish people. And the whole world is blessed by these inventions. So is it that? Is it a combination of that? Is it other stuff? But it was because Abraham obeyed him. Verse 19, then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. Verse 20, sometime later Abraham was told, Milcah is also a mother. She has borne sons to your brother Nahor. Uz, the firstborn Buz, his brother Kemuel, the father of Aram, Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. Milcah bore these 8 sons to Abraham's brother Nahor. Verse 24, his concubine, whose name was Reumah, also had sons, Tebah, Gaham, Tehash, and Maacah. And I don't know why we're told that, but for some reason we are. So that is the end of chapter 22 in Genesis. Bye.